Hello, and thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast, recorded for the second week of September 2020. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm recording this, and the smoke has moved in really heavily. During, I think, yesterday afternoon is when it really started to come in strong, and then this morning, it was really red as the sun came up, and now the sky and the light is really covered in smoke, kind of from the north to the south, and it doesn't seem like there's really any break in it at all. It seems like it's a little higher. It's not settled on the road as much as it was for part of yesterday afternoon, but a lot of smoke out there right now. It'll probably clear up, I hope, maybe in a couple days, but I guess as the way that the weather is working right now, we're getting a lot of easterly wind that's pushing smoke from fires in the Cascades down into the Willamette Valley from Portland, I guess down to, well, I don't know, down to Eugene at least, but definitely down, I guess, like Grants Pass, like Southern Oregon has a lot of smoke. That might be drift from stuff in Northern California from those fires, but I'm not sure. I think it's a lot of these fires from smoke from the Cascades. It's clouding over the valley pretty strongly. But yeah, it looks eerie outside. It looks kind of apocalyptic, and it's kind of orange yellow color of it. A few years ago, I think, was it maybe 2017, we had a week at the end of August, I think, that we had a lot of smoke in the air for probably like a week or almost 2 weeks. I remember that kind of holding in for a little while, but that was probably one of the stronger weeks of like forest fire smoke that I'd seen in a while. Maybe it was back in, I think, the summer of 2013 in Southern Oregon, in Grants Pass, there was a fire. And that, I think, was burning pretty near that location, but the valley of Southern Oregon that was socked in with smoke for what seemed like almost a month. I was there for maybe about a week or a week and a half of it, probably the last couple days of July into most of August, I guess, was pretty brutally interrupted by forest fire and smoke for that area. I think like all the downriver trips, like the river and rafting stuff, was smoked out through that whole Hell's Canyon area that I'd been in before. But yeah, that'd be a real bummer to go vacation, go camping, go on a rafting trip for 4 days and just be in pea soup thick smoke. It looks like fog, like thick fog on the ground, but it's not. It's just terrible thick smoke, ash coming through. Today there was ash kind of falling on my car. Like when I went out this morning, I was looking at the windshield and it was like dusty. And I was like, oh, weird, how's that? And I looked at it a little closer, and it was little bits of ash that had fallen down. So it seems like some part of a tree that was there yesterday. Well, how long ago do you think that was? From the last time it was, just some green, evergreen tree up in the Mount Hood National Forest. Now it's on fire. Now it's up in the air. Now a bit of it is ash on my windshield 150 miles to the south. That's weird how it goes. Just a couple days ago. Shoot. It enjoyed August 1st or September 1st, and then now, Labor Day, it's gone. Poof. Well, I hope everybody had a good Labor Day weekend. It's probably a blast. COVID 2020. It's been a weird year for, I guess, Labor Day. Hanging out, no barbecues, no pool parties. At least not like we're used to, I guess. So it was a pretty normal kind of relaxed day around here. But it was good, though, too. So I wanted to talk a bit about some stuff that's kind of related to, like, the hunting season that's coming up. And I think, and really, like, the archery season that's probably, is it bow season right now that's in effect for, was it, like, elk, maybe deer? I don't know. Is that September 1st that starts? I saw a couple stories about that, like a sad story in, I think, the Tillamook area. A 60-year-old man was out bow hunting, shot an arrow off, got an elk, but the elk was alive. The next day they were scouting to try and find the elk. The elk was still alive. And then it charged the man and the property owner, and it gored the man who shot the elk. It gored the man in the neck, and the man passed away from his injuries. Really weird story out of Tillamook, Oregon. I guess like a guy in his 60s who was going out on an elk hunt and Man, not what I'd expect. Another story, maybe a more fun one, is I think a 13-year-old on his first hunting trip went out on opening day. Before the end of the day, got like a prize-winning elk, a huge one, I guess, like a real big one. But yeah, like just like a couple hours into the first day of it, you get out there, probably wake up at 3 a.m., get out there at 4 a.m., get to your spot. By 8:30, he's got an elk and a picture and a news article by noon. Sounds pretty fun. Good first day introduction to the experience of hunting. But I was going to talk about that a little bit. I thought it would be kind of cool to talk about at least some of the stuff that I know about some of the stuff sort of around hunting stuff. I guess I don't really get into a ton of hunting stuff, but I was trying to think a little bit about some notes that I had about finding and scouting out dispersed hunting campsites, or dispersed campsites that are away from parks, away from state parks, and sort of those bigger areas that are just kind of wide out, open, that you can camp in. And I've been able to find like a number of them over the years. It's really cool getting to kind of find those locations that you can kind of keep a memory of their spot and then go back to year over year. And these are spots that are cool because they don't offer any facilities or any services. So there's no water there. You got to bring all your water in. There's no bathroom services. There's no pavement probably. It's like a pretty dispersed, remote location that you can kind of drive up to. But it's also still connected to a road. So it's not as deep into the backcountry as like a real place that you would go. So for like a lot of hunting stuff, I think what I'd seen in the past and what some of these seem to be set up for is like a hunting party of, say, four cars, for a couple groups of people coming together, and then meeting up for their hunting party, and then having a location where they can have like a big enough base camp where they can have all their equipment, their 4 cars, and then they can go out on their couple day expeditions or their morning hunt, come back to the camp, go out on their evening hunt, come back to the camp, sort of stuff for what it seems like a lot of people in their different locations that they go out on hunting trips and stuff. But I was out in the John Day River area, driving the John Day River Canyon, which is like an area, well, I guess you can probably find it. The John Day River empties out into the Columbia River, and then I think kind of is one of the larger river systems, larger river drainages that exist out in eastern Oregon there. There's a few others that are kind of out there, but I think that's one of the bigger ones that cuts through some of the sections of eastern Oregon. Otherwise, there's like the Deschutes that runs down the east side of the Cascades and drains a couple other rivers into it before it empties out into the Columbia River a little closer to like the Mount Hood area. But the John Day River area is cool. It's out there in eastern Oregon, and that's where I was camping a little bit earlier in July. And as I was driving through, I have that map app, that Onyx mapping tool. And I was going through and I was marking locations as I would drive. I really didn't like stay there or stop there or take pictures or something, but I go through and I'd mark these locations as I was driving around for these dispersed campsite locations that I passed. And so that was kind of a good way for me to make a catalog kind of passively as I was driving around, but make a catalog of the locations that I might be able to go back to, and some of the campsites that seemed a little bit more suitable for a day or an overnight kind of trip or a couple days or something like that. And so that's what I was thinking about for like dispersed hunting campsite locations of some of the stuff that people kind of use, but setting up the mapping tools and using like the photo geotag service or that option that's in the Onyx off-road map app or the Onyx hunt app works really well. I was finding it worked really well to kind of grab the phone, take a picture when you arrived at a location that was like a good hunting camp. But I found like probably like 6 or 7 on the last 2 or 3 trips that I've done, just kind of scouting around as I was driving around in the woods and stuff, places that I didn't end up camping that night. But I thought would be a pretty reasonable spot to head back to sometime in the future. So yeah, the John Day River area had like a lot of stuff. Sort of that area, I guess, between like the Painted Hills around Mitchell, and there's probably a lot of stuff that goes up that highway toward the town of John Day. But I think I took like a back road that followed the John Day River from like the Mitchell area up toward Clarendon, which I think is like north of there. Kind of jumps like to one of the highways that runs north of there, but yeah, like Clarendon and up. And so I kind of took that section, and I was trying to mark like a few of those dispersed camping sites that I would find on the sides. And a lot of these, like I was saying, like there's no services or anything, but they're set up on BLM land or National Forest land. A lot of them, I think, are BLM land. I'm not totally sure about that, how that goes, but as this was, yeah, it was like well, what am I trying to say about it? What's cool about these dispersed campsites is that, you know, you can set up as much stuff as you want. You can be there pretty much undisturbed the whole time, and it's cool. Like, I think a lot of these sites are great to camp at during the summer and stuff, but you can kind of see by the design, like how they were set up, that they were really laid out for hunters coming in September and October to do like the elk and deer like hunting trips. But you can kind of tell that, I think, by like some of the tools and stuff that are set up, or like some of the ways they have their tables, or you see those you see like a branch that's been like nailed in about 10 or 12 feet or 15 feet up in a tree. And I think that's where you can like bring in a deer after you get it while you're out hunting. You can bring it back and then string it up and then start carving up the meat while it's hung up on that. But I think that's like one of the signs that I see a lot. But also there's like, I don't know, just whatever they use for their fire pit or whatever else they use. Really, you're going to see hunters probably like this week and for the next like month straight, if you're out in any of those further eastern Oregon places, of people set up to do their hunting trip and stuff. But there's a couple on and offs between the hunting seasons and stuff for the next couple of weeks. But it's kind of interesting going out there. And I remember this time of year, like out in eastern Oregon toward Hart Mountain, there were like a bunch of hunters that would be set up in different spots for like a couple sections after Labor Day. I remember when I was a kid, I didn't totally reckon how many people would be going to certain places for hunting season stuff. But I was thinking like, wow, there's a lot of people camping for some time after Labor Day. And you think, oh yeah, this is actually like outdoorsmen that, you know, like to go hunting, like to go do stuff into October or into November. And I was thinking, oh yeah, they're not doing like summer camping trips anymore. They're, you know, they're actually doing something else out here in the woods. But it's it's kind of fun going around checking out stuff and trying to do some scouting for that. It's cool though. You know, one thing I've kind of recognized over the years is it's really tough to like just go out into an area that you don't really know very well and try and find a good campsite. And that's why I've kind of started. That's definitely a big reason why I've tried to start making like a little catalog of locations of good campsites I find while I pass them. But also I've been trying to notice that some spots are going to be better than others for different times of the year. So I've been really trying to do a lot of like off-season scouting, where at different times of the year, when maybe even I'm not on a camping trip, I'm able to kind of scout out a couple different areas and mark some locations, or at least like write down or remember that there's a location that I want to go back to. But that helps a lot when you're trying to go out to a campsite or to a camping area, or when your circumstances change. Like a lot of time I'm camping by myself, but it's kind of cool to remember locations that are a little bigger or something, or have a little bit more of a ease of access if you're going with like a group of people that's a little larger and you want to accommodate a couple different cars or a couple different people. I was kind of noticing like the difference between like group sites and like kind of like more remote sites that you might go to. And that's sort of something that you're going to notice out there too, of these bigger group sites where it seems like you could almost have like a horse camp or something. I've seen that as an option out there too. It's kind of strange when you go out, you know, there's like kind of regular camps it seems like you could set up, and then there's like a camp with a corral built into the campsite, and it seems like it's made from timber that was cut and processed. You know, they just like cut down a tree right there and then split it and then made a corral out of it to keep their horses for their horse camp that they had for, you know, some hunting thing that they're up to or some outdoors thing they were up to. But it seems like a lot of these places are like big enough to like bring in an ATV, or, you know, they have like a quad or something like that. But it seems like there's kind of like a big circled out area. And then otherwise there's like different locations that are kind of like more for like high clearance trucks, or, you know, like some kind of four-wheel drive location that's a little bit further, where you can kind of get back a little ways into what would kind of be the backcountry, or, you know, into an closer to a wilderness area, and then you can take that and then jump back further. And do some hunting in an area that you'd maybe scouted out earlier in the year. But for me, like, I don't really hunt or do any of that stuff. I'm just out kind of hunting for pictures and hunting for good campsites and stuff. So that's kind of what's been fun about that. And going through the John Day River area up there, there was a lot of stuff that bordered like some BLM land that stretched up a hill. And I guess that area is like one of the drainages that people go to for a lot of elk hunting. And I hear it's known for that, or, known for some pretty big elk that they're able to get out of that area, which is kind of cool. It'd be fun. Be fun to see some elk out there. I've only seen a couple elk, and most of the time I just see the female elk. I don't think I've really ever seen like a big bull elk out there in the woods. That'd be kind of fun. But I've had a good time, getting out to go to some of those dispersed camping sites and stuff. There's some out in deep Eastern Oregon by like Hart Mountain that I've always really liked. There's a lot in kind of that Eastern Oregon section when you get out there. But what I've noticed though is a lot of the stuff in the National Forest section of say like the Cascades that seem like pretty well populated. It's kind of harder to find good spots up there. You can find like little pullouts and dead end roads and stuff, but as it goes for like just kind of big free dispersed campsite sections, it's a little bit harder to find. It's a little more organized out in those locations. That's what's cool about some of the BLM stuff and some of the high desert location stuff is it's just kind of wide open. You're just sort of driving around. You take some little dinky road off to the side, and then you're at a cool fire pit and a big juniper tree, and it looks like people have been camping there forever. So it's cool that you can kind of find some stuff like that. And I've had a good time going out to Eastern Oregon to find some stuff like that for myself. So I want to get out there and try and go camping at some of the spots. I know like I'm kind of competing with the hunting season, like I was saying, but even still, I want to jump out there and try and do some fall camping. That's really like one of the best times of year to go out there. I really like the springtime, like even the early springtime, like late March and April, while it's still pretty cold. If you can gear up for it, it's really a cool time to be out there because you have so much like texture and weather in the sky and in the clouds. That it kind of keeps the terrain pretty interesting. It can be pretty miserable, if the weather's totally turned on you. But as it goes for a lot of it, it really is kind of like a cool time to be out there in the summertime. It'll even by like May or a little into June for sure. It just gets so hot that it's kind of tough to be out just kind of wandering around or hiking around in the daytime. So it kind of cuts down on the amount of just kind of trekking around or wandering or poking around stuff that you could do. You can probably do some from your truck or something, but it's a little more fun to get out there and hike around, check some stuff out. So it seems like the fall, like when the temperatures are down a little bit, you have a little bit better opportunity to do that. And then early in the springtime. But I think the fall is my favorite time to be out there when you're watching the aspen trees kind of turn from green to yellow to orange and get a lot of color out there in some of those aspen groves that grow out in Eastern Oregon. So I want to try and go out there and get some photographs of it as the seasons start to change and the colors come on in the trees. I bet there's going to be some nice days and stuff out there, and it seems like some of the trees are already starting to turn a little bit. Like I was saying in that last podcast, I'm seeing a lot of trees kind of start to get that late summer, early fall tinge to them, where it looks like they're about to turn over and get brown and begin autumn and stuff. So it's going to come on pretty fast. It's already the second week of September. That's kind of crazy. So I wanted to talk about some of the studio stuff that I've been doing. I got a couple different pieces going. I've been working on editing with a controller. I talked about this a while back on a podcast, but I thought I would talk about it a little bit more on this one after I've had some more experience with it. But I've been working with this Xtouch compact slider controller that kind of plugs into your computer, and it's kind of hard to explain over audio, but it looks like an old mixer board, that you would have seen to like mix audio. And there's this program that connects all of those controls with the controls that you have in Lightroom. It's called LR Control. There's a couple other ones. I think there's another called P Fixer. I might have mentioned this on another podcast in the past that you can check out, I think called Editing with a Lightroom Controller or something, MIDI controller, something like that. You'll find it. It's a few back. it's cool. I've been getting some more experience with it. I'm trying to kind of remember the controls and the processes of it to sort of figure out how to like go over it. But it's a mixer board, so you got like 8 sliders across, and you got a bunch of buttons, and all those buttons kind of trigger a different function of what the sliders and the develop module of Lightroom do. So what you can do is if you have like a new set of photos that come in, you can go through and then adjust those sliders, click over to the next photo, adjust those sliders to kind of change the develop module presets and stuff, and then you can make some changes. But I've been trying to get into that more so that I can kind of go through. What I'm trying to do is go through my Lightroom catalog, pick out all those best photos, which I've done pretty much. So I have like a couple different versions of like portfolios or like all the best kind of select photos that I want to use. And now I'm trying to lay out different locations, like where I want those to go out. So like maybe like this group of photos I might want to put into a photo book, or maybe these group of photos I want to put into a new gallery on my website, or maybe this group of photos I want to go out to be some marketing that I put out onto some social media stuff that just sort of circulates. So I'm trying to kind of make a couple different kind of collections of stuff to do that. But it's cool. What I can do is go through all these old photos that I have, and in Lightroom you have all those adjustments that you made to those photographs sort of saved with the image in Lightroom. So when I click over to the next photo, it'll adjust on my controller all of those faders to the location of the faders that are on the screen. And that means that I can take that fader and then say, oh, it's my exposure. I'll grab the exposure fader and I can move it up a little bit to increase the exposure, or I can pull it back down to make it darker and pull the exposure back a little bit. But it's cool. I'm trying to get used to that. What's nice is outside of just like the simple like exposure or contrast features, some of the stuff you can get to is the color control section. And so in Lightroom, that's always been a little bit of a black hole for me, where I've never really used the color mixer features that much. Like you have your hue, your saturation, and your luminance section, and you can adjust any level of any channel of color that you want to select there. And this is where you can get into a lot of fine tuning of the type of color and light that photo has in it. And you can do a lot of that in sort of a coarse way by adjusting your temperature and your tint with your controls up top. And I think a lot of people kind of try and adjust out the thing in their photo by adjusting their tint, but you can also do that in the color control section there. And you can do that in the HSL section by like selecting red as the channel and then bringing up the saturation of it, or bringing down the saturation, or grabbing the hue of your red channel and pushing it one way or the other. And it's really interesting how you can do that just to that specific color channel. And so this mixer board has been really useful in kind of visualizing how you're going to make those changes and seeing how much change you make to one section or the other. But it's been kind of cool to use that to make some more fine-tuned adjustments to some of the color tone of the images that I'm looking at. And it's kind of nice to, I guess, have like a different way of seeing how you're making changes to your photos and how you're editing. One thing I noticed, though, is that it sort of is an inclination to over-process, which I remember this about like working with a mixer, too. When you have like a bunch of buttons for your EQ, you just kind of keep fiddling with it, or keep twisting it, or keep pushing it, or push it up a little bit more, add a little more of this to help make it better. And it looks better, it looks crisper, it looks like you achieved like whatever kind of single thing you wanted out of it. Like, I want this to have more contrast. You add more contrast. And then, well, I did it. I got more contrast. But then you look at the image overall as you do a couple additional things to it, and you sort of notice early on in the photography stuff, you notice like, oh man, I've layered on like a lot of things onto this photograph that was really maybe only okay to begin with. But now it's kind of got like this kind of crunchy look to it. Even if it's a great photograph, it's got like this over-processed sort of crunchy look to it. My photos still do. And that's one thing I was noticing about mixing with this controller too, is you kind of like want to push that slider up a little higher. You want to roll that dial over just a little bit more. And what I've been trying to do a little bit is sort of pick the outcome that I really want out of the photograph. Not just like I want more out of this picture, just the way that it is, but I want it more, you just kind of push up all the faders and hope it's got more texture, more clarity. But what does that mean, or what's that doing? So I'm kind of trying to like kind of pick the goal of what I want out of the photograph. Like what do I think is working in the picture, and then like how do I want to bring out the color of that or the crispness of that Or do I want it to be like high contrast because I want to kind of show something, which is often sort of what I like? Or do I want to try and soften the contrast so that I get to kind of see these two things and I get to keep the dynamic range a little bit wider? It's just kind of different things and different aspects of how you want to process stuff. And even if you want like a crisp, sort of saturated, vibrant landscape mix, it's the type of mix I really like a lot. It's sort of that look that you get like out of like an Xtouch film, where you have like a lot of crispness, a lot of vibrance, and like a lot of deep blacks in the photograph. So that's what I like a lot in the pictures. But also there's just different photos, and sometimes it looks good to kind of go in a different direction too. But I normally try and like really bring my blacks down a lot and add that kind of contrast back to the picture. And then I try and push up a lot of color into some of the whatever section of the photo has some of the colorful light that was probably drawing me to the picture in the first place. But because I like those kind of crisp pieces of the photo, I normally like add too much sharpening, or I bring in too much detail control, or I adjust that tone curve too much, or like I was saying, I do too many changes to those color adjustments, and then you look at it and you can say, oh, this is like an over-processed piece. It looks like everything about it has been like pushed a little bit, and I think when it's pushed a little bit too much, it's just too noticeable. And so it's cool when you can get it right, and it's really hard to have a neutral eye where you can like as a photographer, it's hard to see that you're like over mixing it. I hear like sound designers have the same kind of problem too when they're mixing audio, and they'll sort of similarly just sort of like compress something, or try and put an amplifier or EQ something, and they sort of solve a problem, but they sort of make a problem too. And after a while, when you listen to the mix overall, it just sounds like, wow, this sounds like just wildly, it just sounds totally unreal. It's sort of like how your brain captures it a little bit. It doesn't sound like a real sound, or in this case, it doesn't look like a real photo. It just looks like every piece of the light has been pressed or pushed or adjusted or manipulated in some way. And similarly with audio, it sounds like the voice or the tone or the instrument has just been pushed or set or kind of mixed in a weird way where you can hear that it's been changed in some way. And so I think part of the photography stuff, and what's cool about the controller stuff a little bit too, is you kind of set your intention of where you want to go with the picture, and then you try and make those changes as subtly as you can to the image while still trying to get that movement made out of it. Sometimes you have to make kind of a critical change to a photo to sort of make it work, but a lot of times you're working with an okay exposure. Raw files, they don't have the type of contrast, and they don't have the type of color saturation in the native raw file as you want in your final output. And that's why leaving photos as is or shooting as is a good idea, but really almost every raw file needs to have that next layer of effort put into it that gets you to that place where you would have been with film after it had been developed. And so that kind of development process is what you get to do with Lightroom. And that's what's cool about Lightroom, is you get to go through the same kind of choices as you would have done, and even way more choices as you would have done in the dark room when you would have been working on developing your film, pushing it or pulling it or dodging or burning it in different locations to try and get that film to come out the way that you wanted to. And there was different choices of film that you would make to get different effects. And so with RAW, you just don't have any of those choices made yet. So like I was mentioning Xtouch earlier, you would use for like a landscape situation where you had a lot of light, or say like some nice shadows and bright colors in the trees or something. You could kind of capture that, and it would look kind of crisp and bright, and it would have a lot of contrast and a lot of color saturation to it. That was cool. But then there was also like a portrait film that had like a lot or a much softer look to it. It had more pastels and pinks and purples, and the sort of lighter, softer colors, sort of skin tones would look a lot more natural with it. With Xtouch, it would look harsh and heavily contrasted and stuff. So those kind of choices, it just is not decided for you when you're shooting a raw frame. And so when you bring that into Lightroom, you do need to kind of add, if it's zeroed out, if you really look at a raw image when it's zeroed out, there's just no contrast to it, and there's no the dynamics of the image just really aren't set up in a way that are appealing at all. So it seems like, it's fine, but they really do need to be adjusted a little bit. And so kind of like thinking about it in advance, having a goal in mind, and then being able to sort of subtly adjust to that is what helps an image kind of come out a lot better. What sort of helps a person avoid over processing their frames like I have been known to do all the time. That's how it goes, I guess. That's kind of part of it. But yeah, so I'm going back through a lot of these photos, and I'm using this controller to sort of nudge those sliders down in different spots, turn different things up, kind of change things and sort of make them a little bit more color accurate, a little bit more even toned in their edit. And then I want to try and make a big export of all of those and a bit of a higher resolution compression than what I've done before. I put those up in a way where people can see those online in a better way. And so I've been making a bunch of changes to my website, and I've been trying to rebuild that over this last year in 2019. I think for a period while I hadn't been recording a podcast in the winter time, I had done a lot of work on the website, BillyNewmanPhoto.com, trying to change the graphics around and some of the links and the structure of it. And so happy with the changes, happy with the way that it works and stuff. Yesterday, I just added a new tab to the page where it says 360. It's kind of below the main masthead and below the header piece there, where there's a block of links, of kind of big photo links that go out to different locations. But that first one in the block says 360, and that was goes to a YouTube playlist that I have put together, where there's a bunch of the 360 videos that I've put together from the Theta. Is it the Z1? I think I was talking about the Theta Z1 360 camera video that I put together, and then a bunch of stuff from the GoPro Fusion 360 camera that I put together a couple years ago. But a bunch of landscape locations across Oregon with some still, like stationary video clips and some like walking clips, where it's sort of like more like a VR tour, like a VR walkthrough of an outdoor location. But like places like Smith Rock, I've got Fort Rock, got some stuff up in the Cascades. I've got a spot by Crater Lake. I've got some cool stuff on the coast by some cool kind of mountain cliffs along the Pacific coast. That's a really cool one. And I got a couple of. I got like I got riding a bicycle. That one's a fun one. Riding a motorcycle. Riding a motorcycle on like a dirt road through a bunch of Oregon grape. That's a 360 that's up there. But a couple cool VR videos that I've been trying to put together over the last couple of years. But I've got a playlist together. It's up on the YouTube, and so there's new link, new change on the website that cuts over to that, which is pretty fun. Happy about that. And then I'm trying to go through the website, and I'm trying to add some new links to a bunch of old posts. So I'm trying to go back through and kind of fill those out a little bit to have some links out to some different spots. Like if I talk about like a camera I'm using or a piece of gear, I'm trying to have a link out, not to a place to buy it, like an Amazon page, which a lot of people have, like have some kind of like Amazon affiliate or something like that. What I'm trying to do is send out like just to places that have like information about it. Sometimes it's just the Wikipedia page, because that's really like the most current thing that exists about some of it. Sometimes it's like the manufacturer page about it, or sometimes it's a third-party reviewer. That's sort of a more trusted site. But for like a lot of the camera stuff, it's like kenrockwell.com or like DP Review. When I'm talking about the camera equipment I might have used on a trip, I mentioned the D3 or the D2H that I used, or when I switched over to a Sony A7R. I'm trying to go back to some of those images, and if I'm mentioning that or if I'm talking about that equipment, then what I want to do is fill in a couple of those links so that if you check that page out, you can link out and learn a little bit more about that camera equipment specifically for those details. I don't really know them all. I remember I read it when I bought the camera, I think, but outside of that, I don't really remember any of it. I also want to talk about these cool PA speakers that I picked up. So I got a pair of pretty big like PA speakers. I think it's like a 12-inch and then a tweeter, and it's two of those. So I got a left and right, and I put them up in the studio right now. Really, it's like way too big to go in the studio. I could just use like little desk speakers to fill up the amount of space that this is. But it's cool to have a PA again. It's probably like big enough you could take to like an outdoor event or an indoor event or something. You could have it. It would run a wedding fine, something like that. But I didn't have an amplifier. I think I'd gotten rid of it when I had moved out to Hawaii. So I was looking around online, and I picked up an amplifier that's like a rack mount amp, and it's kind of cool. It's running fine. I mean, it's no big deal, but it's cool now. You can like connect Bluetooth to the amp, which isn't probably my only preferred way. I think there's some things that'll happen that mess with the sound, but it's cool. I can just like hook my laptop up, Bluetooth to the amp, and then it's playing out of this big PA system. So it can definitely rock the house. That's for sure. So it's a pretty small house in sort of a residential area. Even it's a house, but it's not an apartment anymore. But as it is, even still, it's pretty loud sometimes. So I've been keeping it down. But it's cool to have it, and I want to try and use it along with I've got a couple amplifiers here for the guitar stuff that I've got up on the wall. But I want to incorporate the PA into it a little bit too, where I think I've done some stuff with the acoustic guitar. Where you can kind of amplify that through the PA, and then I also want to try some stuff of miking an amplified speaker, and then recording that as sound instead of direct input into the audio interface. That's pretty exciting. I'm sure you guys are excited to think about how I will route a sound recording that I may or may not do in the future. But that's some of the stuff I wanted to talk about. Setting up a mixer, setting up a PA, working with Bluetooth, and I don't know how do you use a PA in a studio? It seems like it'd be pretty easy to understand, but for audio or for kind of the light stuff, it's like I got headphones on right now, so it's not too hard. But now I've got a giant PA. It's big. It's like as big as the one I like set up for dances in high school. So it's like this is huge. I don't know, probably overkill for what I'm going to need, but it's kind of cool to have. So yeah, thanks a lot for listening to this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. I appreciate you guys checking it out, listening to me talk a little bit about smoke, about how to find a dispersed campsite, some spots up in the John Day area, some elk hunting stories. Wow, pretty cool editing with an Xtouch. That's been really fun. Yeah, we covered it all. No way. But yeah, you can check out more stuff at billynewmanphoto.com. A lot of updates there that I've been trying to put together, trying to put some more stuff up on the blogs itself. Maybe some more helpful stuff. It's a lot of just like kind of photo posts, but I want to try and put up some more information about how I'm putting those together or sort of what I'm up to with that. And I've got the time and stuff, so it's kind of cool to put some of that stuff together and see some people use it. So I've been happy about that. Happy to see the podcast numbers. They're cool. So yeah, if you're checking out the podcast, thank you. Appreciate it. If you checked all the way out to this, goodness, thank you very much. But yeah, shoot me an email sometime. You can find some contact information out at billynewmanphoto.com/about. I'm pretty sure. So go there and find out all the information about me you want to. But until next time, I appreciate you guys tuning into this episode of the Billy Newman Photo Podcast. Talk to you next time. Goodbye.